Our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel, is in Tel Aviv for us. So, Richard, all of this, right, belies this leadership question, this leadership, you could call it, void in Iran right now. What happens moving forward? The president has called on Iranians. You know, the administration wants them to essentially rise up. That is complicated for a variety of reasons, especially as the president is threatening continued military action that could be very intense in and around Tehran and the rest of the country.
It's also unclear how he expects them to do this, to rise up. And is that really the U.S. strategy, to destroy Iran, to destroy Iran's military capabilities, to destroy its navies, to weaken the government so much that a popular street revolution can take over? Is that really the objective of this war, to weaken the country so much that almost anyone who is able to get out onto the streets and take over government buildings becomes the next leader of Iran? That seems like a very unclear path forward when it comes to the future vision of Iran. But also what we heard the president today talk about was the military objectives. We've talked about that quite extensively. You talked about that with Courtney Kube. He also talked about the justification for the war, why he decided to launch this war with Israel now. What was the imminent threat? And one of the reasons that he mentioned was that negotiations were failing, that the Iranians walked away, that they didn't want to negotiate. That is not what the negotiators themselves have been saying. The Omanis, who were the main mediators in these talks, the Omani foreign minister, said that they were making progress and that an opportunity was missed when this war was launched. And I just spoke a short while ago to another Arab negotiator, and he said that the Iranians didn't walk away from the talks, that they were making progress, that they were supposed to have follow-up negotiations, follow-up technical meetings when this war began. So there are real questions about the future objectives, who's going to take over in Iran if, in fact, there is some sort of regime collapse, and why the war itself was launched when it was launched.
And how about, Richard, and as we've gotten the reporting, of course, on the intelligence assessments about the Saturday morning timing of all this, give us a sense. You're in Tel Aviv. I know you've traveled. I think you're in Jerusalem. I know you were nearby at a town that was hit extremely hard, a city that was attacked that's not far from Jerusalem, where multiple people were killed. Give us a sense of what you've seen on the ground and what you've heard from Israeli officials on this front as that part moves forward as well.
So Israeli officials are speaking out and talking about the importance of this military campaign, how Iran must be destroyed, how the Iranian regime must be brought to its knees so that it can no longer threaten Israel. I was at the town of Beit Shemesh, which is outside of Jerusalem. Yes, I am in Tel Aviv now. And while I was there, Prime Minister Netanyahu came to inspect the damage, and he spoke to reporters who were on location. I threw a question to him. He did not answer it. I asked him, how does he see this war ending? He didn't answer that, but he did speak to some reporters in both Hebrew and English, and he said that the goal is to teach Iran a lesson, to destroy the regime, to destroy an evil regime that he said attacks civilians. He focused on the fact that Israel and the United States are targeting military sites in Iran, while Iran is attacking civilian locations here and across the region. Generally, in Israel, the mood seems to be in favor of this conflict. I've spoken to Israelis here in Tel Aviv and other parts of the country, including at places where there have just been Iranian missile strikes. And so far, I've heard nothing but unilateral support that the U.S. and Israel must go forward, must continue this campaign. A lot of support for President Trump, who seems to be more popular here, or at least as popular here as Israel's prime minister.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.